that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder hope gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the September 17th edition of Energy Week with George Harvey, me, and the amazing Tom Fennell over here.
In the flesh?
I'm not giving a number on this because I found out it would have been the 389th, but I found out that, and I've mentioned this before, and I have been trying to figure out what to do about it.
I'm calling it 388.1.
388.1. I didn't count
Yeah.
the things because there were hundreds of them when I started using those numbers. I just depended on the number that had been put up at BCTV, and then I discovered that there were 5 pieces in there that had never been. They were not Energy Week. They had nothing to do with it, and so anyway, I'm going to do 5 with no number, which Tom will label 388.1.
Well, that's just for my own purposes, for my own clarification.
We'll return in a few weeks at 389 when we actually get to the 389th show. Okay, having said that,
we've got a picture here.
Today is the
This is not the picture that I want to get up there.
Yeah, today is the 17th of September, and we're starting a week ago today, which is Thursday, the 10th of September. And we're going to be reading talking about these articles.
You got a picture I can put up?
I do, if you want to put it up.
Well, at least I can put it on deck here. This picture doesn't mean anything at all.
There we go.
There we go.
This is a matter of computers deciding that they need attention. Computers are kind of like babies.
Sometimes.
Or puppies or something like that.
Sometimes.
Except they're not as fun as babies or puppies. You can take a look at get a link to the actual article if you want to read it by going to geoharvey.com, which is my blog, and click on the calendar for the date that we will give you. Or you can go to the accompanying Energy Week 9/17/2020.
Some of these are well worth following.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Some of these are very interesting and informative, and I'll try to alert you, but sometimes even that escapes me because usually this week they're all good.
Yeah. Our first item comes from World Oil, and it's the one that had that picture. Money has.
Oh, the picture's up.
Actually, the picture wasn't with the article,
huh?
Or maybe it was. There was one that. Yeah, I think this was actually with the article.
Yeah, it's actually carbon. That's
when you see Wikimedia Commons there, it usually means that I found the picture. But in this case, I think it was a Wikimedia picture that was with the article.
Well, I'll tell you what the article says. It says BP joins financiers in a call for U.S. to tax greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah, BP has been at the focus of just an incredible amount of news this last week.
Well, they get it.
Yeah.
But the other guys get it too and choose to ignore it, I think.
Well, so far.
For their own purposes.
Yeah. This is from World Oil, as I said. Let me read the synopsis. The U.S. government should start making businesses pay for their greenhouse gas emissions to help combat global warming, according to a powerful group of finance and energy titans. The businesses include Morgan Stanley, J.P. Morgan Chase and Company, and BP, along with a whole bunch of others. And BP, as I said, has been doing just amazing things to try to, talking about switching. And you know what they're doing, Tom? I think they're looking at a couple of different things, one of which is the history of Danish oil and natural gas.
History of who?
Danish oil and natural gas. Dong.
Okay, yeah.
Where it was after we started doing the show that Dong said, a spokesman came out and said, we're going to have to accept the fact that oil and natural gas are declining, and we've got to get out of that business.
Well, they all have to be aware of that.
Yeah.
They must be.
Yeah.
I mean, but I think for their own purposes, they're playing the game differently.
Well, Danish Oil and Natural Gas looked at the business of stranded assets, I think, and said, well, they're going to be stranded. No matter how hard we try to get money out of these stranded assets, they're going to be stranded. Other companies are not so willing to change. But the interesting thing here is Danish Oil and Natural Gas, which has changed its name to Ørsted, is now a major player in offshore wind.
They're doing a good job with wind.
Right, and they have
They're
started
in the catbird seat right now.
Yeah, and they've started to move into onshore, and they've moved into solar
and
floating, and they've got, you know, they're a big player now, and they've got a future in front of them that doesn't include oil and gas. And I think if you look at the, you know, I've talked about the coal index and the oil and gas index. Dow Jones. Yeah. Well, the Dow Jones Oil and Gas Index, since Donald Trump
is there still a coal index?
Yes, the Dow Jones Oil and Gas Index, since Donald Trump took office, has fallen something like 55 or 60%.
That's because he's trying to protect them.
Yeah, and he's been doing a great job with coal, which is down something like 88% now. But the day before yesterday, I looked to see what was happening with the Renewable Energy Index.
It's gone up. It's
gone up over 200% since Donald Trump took office.
Well, I can't believe these guys don't know what's going on.
No, we've got a bunch of stuff.
But I think they're playing the game to suit their projections. I mean, the people who are in oil and gas, they know they're in trouble. And they want to sell as much of it as they can, as soon as they can, to prevent stranded assets. So they're playing a game that, we got plenty.
I don't think they really know what to do at all.
You may be right. I think they do when they're choosing not to. But
I think a lot of them, Dong, obviously, they looked at this and they said, we've got to move. And I think BP is looking at it and they're saying, we have to move. And the rest of them haven't said that yet.
Well, but BP is doing something about it. They're getting into alternatives heavily.
They have been, and they've been abandoning that position too in the past. But this time, I don't think they're going to walk off of this. They're just going to keep going with this.
Well, I think they see this is where the money is.
Yeah. Okay, should we go on?
Let's see, I had a note here.
Oh, okay.
Climate change possesses a significant risk to the financial system.
Oh, yeah.
But calls for a tougher government stance have had little success. Okay, Trump officials have reversed policies implemented to cut emissions, and the U.S. is withdrawing from the 2015 Paris Agreement. Well, I think that's all politics. But
well, it's
Trump.
I think it's very largely Trump, and it's also largely the fact that oil and natural gas, people heavily invested in that, and specifically the $889 million that was pledged by Freedom.
You're not going to say they're giving them money, are you?
They pledged to elect people who would be on their side, and that's what they did. And so now, and you know what's happened is they had an ideology that was basically pro-oil and natural gas, anti-renewable, deny climate change. And what they've got is political parties, a specific political party that takes that position and is, I don't know what to say about their other political positions.
Well, politics is what it is. But as usual,
you know, it's like they'll take whatever comes along. If it happens to be QAnon, then it's QAnon, you know, great, fine.
Well, there's a takeaway here.
Yeah.
CO2 emissions inflict a cost on society.
Yes.
That is not reflected in market energy prices, which we've talked about.
Yes, many times.
A carbon price is the most efficient way to fix it.
Yes.
And it seems to be, and I think eventually it's inevitable.
Yeah, possibly.
But that's just my thought.
Okay.
Well, we got a picture here of an oil rig coming
We do. And this is an article from MSN Money.
Well, let everybody look at that oil rig for a while.
Yep.
Trump courts Florida voters with a moratorium on offshore drilling. Now, this is interesting.
Well, you know, it's not the only thing that he's done, though.
I mean, he's doing the right thing, but probably for the wrong reason.
And would you trust him to believe that he's going to maintain that moratorium in the future? He'll keep
You
it.
can't trust him to do anything other than brag about how great he is.
Yeah, you can bet your bottom dollar that he's not going to allow an oil rig off Mar-a-Lago or any other property that he owns. But if you consider what has happened to his friends, oil and gas has gone down 50 or 60%, coal has gone down 88%.
So what he's doing isn't working.
It's almost like he's got a policy of throwing whoever he feels like under the bus. So what do you say?
Well, Trump courts Florida voters with a moratorium on offshore drilling. I think I just said
You
that.
did. President Trump expanded a moratorium on drilling off Florida's coast in an attempt to court voters in a must-win battleground state. He said he would block drilling in coastal Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, and painted himself as an environmentalist. And
Wow.
then what happened was Michael Bloomberg came along and said, and by the way, I'm going to put $100 million.
I was just going to say, didn't he give a big amount of money to
$100 million
Democrats?
into the Florida race.
That's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money.
Well, according to this article, offshore drilling is almost universally opposed by both Democrats and Republicans in Florida. And it's basically because of the effect on tourism.
Yeah.
Okay? 10 East Coast states, which is the whole rest of the East Coast from Connecticut to North Carolina, have sued to try to prevent oil and gas drilling, but only South Carolina has received special treatment from the administration. And of course, Florida, as this article is. And South Carolina is getting special treatment because of lobbying by Bob Graham, who's the senator. Okay, so it's all politics. And just as a little takeaway here, the Sierra Club has named Trump the worst president ever for the environment.
Well,
I can't think of anybody worse.
I hate, I get into politics on the show, and I really don't want to. You've already said everything I needed to say, so.
Huh? That's not me saying it. I'd say he's worst president ever, period. But,
yeah.
But the Sierra Club is limiting it just to the environment. Well, let's move on. And we got a nice picture of
We have a
elephants.
picture of elephants and an article from the BBC.
Who can't like elephants, you know?
I don't know. I've never been very fond of elephants.
Oh, yeah,
I
I
don't
think
dislike
elephants are
them.
great.
I think that they should be allowed to do whatever they want to do. If I had an elephant in the backyard, I would not argue with it. I do like elephants in a sense, but they've never attracted me much.
Well, wildlife is in a catastrophic decline due to human destruction.
Wildlife populations, this is not just elephants, it's everything, have fallen by over 2/3 in the last 50 years, a major report from conservation group WWF says.
We're a wildlife fund.
Yeah. It warns that, quote, catastrophic decline, end quote, shows no sign of slowing, and nature is being destroyed by humans at a rate that has never been seen before.
Well, this is a long and very interesting article with a lot of pictures. So this is something.
There are a lot of pictures in this article. It was hard for me to choose those elephants, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. But if you like pictures, this is a good article to look at.
Absolutely.
So the World Wildlife Foundation looked at thousands of different species of habitats across the world.
Yes.
Okay, they went into this thing in depth. Wildlife is in free fall.
Yes.
As we burn forests, overfish seas, and destroy wild areas.
Yeah, I have felt for a long time that we're at a point where we shouldn't be looking at a species like white rhinoceros and say there's very few of these left, we've got to save them.
It's much bigger than that.
It's bigger than that. We have to look at this and we have to say, what are we going to save? And the ones that we have to save are going to have to be the ones that can be saved. Because I don't think, for example, I don't think it's going to be possible to save polar bears.
I think you're right. And possibly timber wolves.
I just don't know. We've had a terrible effect on these things. I know they're going to try to save polar bears because they're going to put them in zoos. And if they disappear in the wild, they will be in the zoos. But
that isn't quite the same thing.
It's not the same thing. They will be severely, be put under severe pressure. And even in zoos, they might not survive. And there are species out there that are worth keeping that are not even threatened today.
But they will be tomorrow.
But they will be. You know,
Yeah.
I remember that the Audubon Society said among the birds that they're worried about are bald eagles and Baltimore Orioles, neither of which was actually threatened. But they believe that those two species could become seriously threatened in the future. And moose is another one.
Yep.
We're going to see moose extirpated. I have no doubt of that.
Yep.
Now, whether it's going to survive, well, moose are pretty widespread.
Well, they'll probably survive in Canada, but they're going to disappear from Vermont.
I have no doubt of that.
Yeah.
They also live in Russia.
Okay.
They're native moose in Russia.
Native moose in Russia.
I knew a
Those are
guy who
big.
killed a moose in Russia.
Huh?
I knew a guy who killed a moose in Russia hunting.
Okay.
He said he was 35 miles from Moscow, and he was hunting moose, had a 12-gauge shotgun. A moose was charging him. He shot it, and it went down and tumbled and wound up right at his feet.
Wow.
Now tell me if that's scary. I don't think
We got a little quick takeaway here.
Yeah.
To turn the tide, we must transform the way we produce and consume food.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, including reducing food waste and eating food with a lower environmental impact, like corn.
Eating food like corn.
Not
eating food like corn. Yeah,
corn has a terrible environmental.
It's got a terrible environmental impact. I've said many times, when I was a little kid in grade school, I was living in Illinois. We had cornfields all around.
They're not there anymore.
Well, you know, this is people moving into the town. The town at that time had a population of about 5,000.
Oh, okay.
And now it's got a population of about 17,000. And, you know,
But still, you can only grow corn on the same land for a few years, and then you're not getting any yield at all.
well, corn is difficult, and you know, with the ways that they grow it, it becomes more difficult. And I remember the teacher saying there are three crops that are extremely destructive.
And corn's one of them.
And she was talking to a classroom full of farm kids. About a third of the kids in the class were from farms. And those three crops are corn, tobacco, and cotton.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely
you know, they're
right.
just very, very destructive.
Absolutely
Okay,
right.
we
There's a
should
picture coming
go
up
on.
here again.
We're up to Friday, September 11th.
Put the picture
And
here.
this
That's
is
a
a-
fire in the Amazon, in case somebody.
Yeah, there. You know, I did a little research on this, and I found that they talk about thousands of fires in the Amazon. What you're looking at there is not a big fire. It's a fire that somebody lit, probably on purpose, so they could clear some land.
A terrible amount of that's happening in the Amazon.
There's thousands of them happening in the Amazon.
Yeah. These people are all illegal.
Yeah, it's
Just-
all illegal, and the president of Brazil is a man who I think takes Donald Trump as a model.
Yeah, I can't think of his name, but he's not doing good things for Brazil.
Bolsonaro.
Is that Bolsonaro? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's a picture of a fire in the Amazon, as I said, and the article says tens of thousands of fires are pushing the Amazon to a tipping point.
Yeah,
This is kind of a scary article.
It's a scary article. This is from CNN. Fires continue to rage at high levels through the Amazon in Brazil for a second year in a row, raising concerns among scientists that the rainforest's destruction could eventually reach a point of no return, and the government of Brazil is doing little to curb illegal fires.
Well, what it's saying here is most fires in the Amazon are set by private interests seeking to transform the rainforest into their own private lucrative agricultural enterprises.
And-
they're squatting.
Yeah, and on top of everything else, if the native population wants them to stop, the army goes out and rousts the native
Gets the
population.
natives out of there.
So this is, you know, we're back. This, you know, I get a little bit upset when people get into racism because they pin on racism things that I think really don't have anything to do with anything but money. But in this particular case, this is racism.
It is racism. Well,
Yeah.
these people have been living there for 1,000 years, and basically they're trying to kick them out.
Yes, of land that they legally occupy.
That they don't even, the land that they legally occupy, but these
The people
usurpers don't.
don't. That's
They're
right.
just squatting.
That's right.
Well, what it says here is 95% of the deforested area in Brazil in 2019 wasn't authorized. Okay, that's what this article's about. Well, aerial photographs showed 30,000 fires in the Amazon last month.
30,000.
30,000 fires.
Now,
Worst in 10 years.
This is different from the fires in California, which are huge, many of
They're
them.
smaller fires.
These are little fires. This thing that we saw that picture of, people probably wouldn't even notice.
Well, here's a takeaway.
Except that there's
the tipping
thousands of
point
them.
for the Amazon the tipping point for when the Amazon can no longer sustain itself lies between 20 and 25% of deforestation. We're already up to 17.
Well,
They're on their way.
We're going to have to hope that something is done to stop that. Okay, our next article is
Got another picture coming up here.
from CNN.
And that's a nice little turbine there, isn't it? BP again,
BP again.
invests in offshore wind to power 2 million American homes. Why are they doing that?
They want to make money. CNN. BP is moving into offshore wind power for the first time with a $1.1 billion investment in the United States. BP plans to make major investments into bioenergy, hydrogen, and carbon capture and storage. It aims to raise $25 billion by selling oil and gas assets over the next 5 years. Now you know what they're going to do with their stranded assets. They're going to sell them before they're stranded.
Well, that's a good idea.
Well, it's good. There's one thing that I keep thinking about on that, though, and that is they're going to sell them to somebody who's going to try to exploit them.
Unfortunately.
Well,
bringing this back locally, BP is buying a stake in the Empire and Beacon floating offshore wind projects.
Yeah.
The Empire project is right off Long Island,
right.
and the Beacon is in Massachusetts. So coming close. And
These are close to
floating
home.
offshore. This is relatively new in the East Coast.
Yes.
Well, let's move along here.
Okay, we've got an item from the
Got another
BBC,
picture here.
and we have a little girl looking at what's left of her bike, which is to
Her
say
burnt
practically
bicycle.
nothing. I'm assuming that's her bike. The article
Well-
didn't say that it was.
Well, you don't have to assume it's burned.
No, you don't have to. That bike is complete toast.
Well, I'm going to get me up here, I guess. Oregon wildfires. 500,000 people flee dozens of infernos. Now, there's a map and pictures and videos in this one. This is an interesting...
This is scary. I mean, if you think about the fact that this happened 2 years ago and it happened again this year, and then you look at the areas that are in there and you think if that happens every other year, there's not going to be anything left of Oregon in 15 years.
Well, I read an article this morning that says exactly that. You know, people are migrating because of the climate. And we've talked about that.
Yes, we have. This is from BBC. More than 500,000 people in Oregon are fleeing deadly wildfires that are raging across the Pacific Northwest, according to authorities. Governor Kate Brown said at least 4 fatalities have been confirmed. More than 100 wildfires are currently scorching 12 western U.S. states. And again,
Now, this didn't used to happen,
we've always had big fires.
but not 100 of them.
No, not 100 of them. We had one time, which was the day that of the Chicago fire in the 19th century, when we had a series of fires in the Midwest,
Yeah.
one
Yep.
of which was the Peshtigo fire.
Is that the one that climbed over into Michigan?
It might have.
Yeah.
It's generally accepted that the Peshtigo fire jumped Green Bay.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, which is at its narrowest
That's a
point.
pretty good jump.
Yeah, at the narrowest point, it's about 10 miles.
Uh-huh.
And there's very clear evidence that could have happened because there was, for example, a sign from a hardware store. I think it was a hardware store, but it was a store sign which had caught fire, and it had been carried aloft by what they call a firenado, a tornado of fire. It was carried aloft, went high enough that it would no longer burn,
Okay.
and then fell back to earth
On the other side.
something like 7 miles away.
Yeah.
So they're seeing, this could have happened. You could have had embers from these things jump Green Bay. There was at the same time another set of fires that started up in Michigan. And so there are people who are saying, wait a minute, do you think this thing jumped Lake Michigan? And there are people who are saying, yeah, they think that it jumped, it possibly.
I think it had to have.
But, well, it could have been from a different source.
Okay.
You know, I mean, some cow kicked over a lantern in Michigan.
Yeah.
I don't know, but the point is, when you have the circumstances where this can happen, it can be really, really bad. And the last 20 years, I'm going to say the 30 years from 1870 to about from 1875 to 1995, 20 years, there were a bunch of very weird things that happened in American weather.
Yes.
That's the time when they had that horrible blizzard in New York City. It was the time of what they called the schoolhouse blizzard in the Midwest, where some schoolhouses were actually knocked down by the blizzard. But there were children who tied themselves together so that they could get to the nearest farmhouse.
Wow.
And in some cases, the entire class went missing.
Wow.
And there were young school teachers who were, like, a lot of the teachers they had in those days were 19 and 20 years old, young women.
Yeah.
And a lot of them died, and they call it the schoolhouse blizzard. There was a year where we had incredible heat in New York. It was like 10 days in a row of 100 degrees. Then that period was just one of really weird weather. Doesn't normally happen, but it's definitely happening now, and it's happening in a trend that is graphable.
And the warm weather is promoting wildfires.
Yeah.
Well, more than 10%, 4.4 million acres have been razed. That's bigger than Connecticut.
Yes.
Okay? More than 10% of Oregon's population is fleeing.
Yes.
Okay, so they're all on the move there. Wildfires have prompted mass evacuations, especially in the suburbs of Portland, because Portland is threatened. There's the fires all around Portland.
If you look at the map with this article, you can see that.
Yeah,
it's very clear. It's very scary, actually.
Absolutely.
You know what it reminds me of, Tom? Back when we were dealing with Vermont Yankee and the question of whether it would be there or no.
Yeah.
I talked to an engineer, and he was talking about safety.
About
safety. And he said, well, one thing that we know is not going to happen is we're not going to have to worry about wildfires hitting Vermont Yankee. And I thought about that, and I thought, Peshtigo fire? And he went on and said, all of the land to the west is farmland. The fires aren't going to cross that. And look, we've got this excellent fire break to the east in the Connecticut River. And I was thinking, Peshtigo fire, jumped green.
Yeah,
you could have a fire in Wilmington that would come up the mountains and jump over the mountains and wind up going straight to the edge of the Connecticut River.
Well, we're not talking a terrible distance here.
No, we're not.
So it's entirely possible.
Yeah, it is.
Let's move along here to Saturday, September 12th.
What a good idea.
And we
have an article from Renews,
and
we have a picture of a wind turbine with Chinese symbols on it.
Is that what that is?
Yeah.
Aha. Well, Shanghai Electric wind power orders soar 505%.
What? Every time I see that, I'm thinking, what is going on here?
It's interesting because we've talked about Siemens Gamesa.
Yeah.
That's a Siemens Gamesa, but it's made in China.
That's right. It's made in China. They didn't do the engineering. They licensed the engineering, but they're making the wind turbines. Shanghai Electric reported orders for wind power equipment were up over 505% in the first 6 months of 2020 compared to the same period last year. The company signed a licensing agreement with Siemens Gamesa in 2018 to produce and sell the latter's 8.0-167DD turbine in China. 8.0-167 is the 8.0 is the number of megawatts.
That's megawatts, yep.
And the 1.67, I think, is the diameter of the swept area in meters.
I'll buy that. That's
so
logical.
it would be 167 meters across, which means that those blades are probably...
So that's not the biggest one that they make, but it's up there.
Yeah, it's up there. Okay, our next item is from CNN.
Got another picture here.
We have another picture.
This is kind of scary.
It is kind of scary, and unfortunately, this is the way it is out there. It's on the whole West Coast, or at least, most of the West Coast.
Where is that?
I don't know.
No, no. I don't recognize it. I mean, could be Los Angeles.
Oh, I saw. I
It's got
saw
some
where
tall
that
buildings,
was.
but it doesn't have a lot
It's
of
got
them.
that building in the front has got a dome on the top. It's kind of hard to see.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, I can see that
And
now.
I'm
You identify that building, you know where you are.
Yeah, I don't remember where that was. This is from CNN.
Well, the article says the fires raging out west are unprecedented. Well, that's a true statement.
Yeah,
They are also a mere preview of what climate change has in store. Now, that's the scary part.
that's scary. And over 3 million acres have burned in California. 3 of the 5 largest fires in the state's history are burning right now. 3 of the biggest 5 in history are currently burning, as are huge swaths of Oregon and Washington. In most years, this would be when the fire season starts.
But it's well underway now.
Oh man, is it? And the thing that is scary about this, I've been seeing predictions, scientific projections of how long the climate will continue to change after we stop emitting carbon dioxide.
They're not. They're
doesn't-
not very favorable.
No, they're not. It doesn't stop immediately.
No.
It's not like a going to the stove and turning off the gas under the whistling teapot and immediately stops whistling. This is more like you go to the stove and you turn off the gas under the double burner or a double boiler. It's already boiling.
It's still going
And you've got something above it which is cooking. It's going to continue cooking
for a while.
for a while, and it will get hotter as it cooks for a while. And
Well,
that's
this
the
is
way.
an interesting thing. There's a short video of the
Yeah.
fires, and it's kind of scary. And there's a lot of pictures in this one.
Yeah.
If you like pictures, this is a good one here.
Well, what the scientists were saying a few years ago is it'll continue getting worse for at least 25 years after we stop emitting carbon dioxide. Now they're saying more like a couple of centuries. And guess what? We haven't even begun to stop emitting carbon dioxide. We've got a lot of work to do.
Here's the takeaway here. The more we heat up the planet, the more we are increasing the odds in favor of the hot, dry conditions conducive to fires.
Exactly.
So that's an explanation for why
Yeah,
it's happening
and
right
what
now.
we have to do is stop emitting carbon dioxide, and that means not
We're going
driving
to stop
cars.
burning things.
We have to stop burning things. If we could do it tomorrow, that would be a wonderful thing.
Well, we could do it tomorrow.
Well, we not quite that fast.
Well, very quickly if we put our minds to it, but the oil companies don't want to give up their oil.
Yeah.
They want to sell it.
Okay, let's go on to the next item. This is from Clean Technica.
And we
We
got a
have a
picture
picture
here.
here.
Yeah, let's
That
get that
picture
picture
is
up.
of a farm at Green School in Bali. I think Bali is where Tomas Fricka and his wife. Tomas was on our show.
Yeah, it was on our show. Yeah, I think you're right.
I think they live in Bali.
Well, Bali is right in the middle of Indonesia.
Indonesia, yeah. But it's
And he was from Indonesia. He was.
yeah, and Bali has a different culture than the islands around it, as I recall.
Yes, it does. You're right.
It's Hindu as opposed to Muslim.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. Yep.
Anyway, this is from Clean Technica.
Should food's environmental damage be included in its purchase cost? Duh.
What would food cost if its environmental damage were factored into its actual retail price? If grocers and manufacturers took into account the environmental impact of meat, milk, cheese, and other foods, they would actually cost a lot more than they do. And basically, we're saying,
Well, as the article says, environmental damage is currently not included in the food price.
Yep.
Instead, it is a burden on the general public and future generations.
And our health.
And definitely our health,
Yeah.
absolutely.
We have to move. That is a very interesting article, and it's one that I think people should read. We're up to Sunday, September 16th.
And then we got another
13th,
picture coming up.
And we have a picture of the
Let's
Blue
see-
Ridge
Let's see
Mountains.
if I can get this mouse to move.
There you
There it
go.
is.
There,
This is
almost.
nice. This is a nice picture.
There you go.
That's
Yeah.
the Blue Ridge Mountains, and they're beautiful.
And that is one that I did take from Wikimedia Commons. Clean Technica had a picture that was very nice, but it was oriented wrong for me. It was oriented wrong for me to. Vertical pictures are difficult to put in.
Yeah.
So I went to Wikimedia Commons and got this, which is
There's a wonderful parkway that goes through these Blue Ridge Mountains.
I've ridden on it.
And it's It's a parkway. It's not a direct road. A 45-mile-an-hour speed limit.
Yeah.
Pull-offs every so many feet.
Yep.
It's gorgeous. You can spend all day on that thing.
Yep.
We wanted to do it in Vermont, and they killed it for bigotry reasons. That's what I read. This is from an article that I read. It would attract too many Jewish New Yorkers.
It would attract other people besides Jewish New
Well,
Yorkers.
this was the article I was reading. It's about the bigotry that existed even then.
Yeah. Well, it still exists.
Well, I got a friend who lives in Springfield, and he talks about the Ku Klux Klan having meetings when he was a child. And I said, in Springfield, there's just no black people in Springfield.
The
He
Ku
said
Klux
it was
Klan.
about Catholics.
Yeah, the Ku Klux Klan was in control in Indiana at one point.
Uh-huh.
How many black people were there in Indiana in 1925?
Well, you don't think of the Ku Klux Klan operating at all in Vermont, but they did.
Yeah, they did. And the bigotry exists. And, I tell people I am proud of the fact that among my ancestors were slaves.
Huh?
My skin may be pink, but there's black in my background.
You got slaves as ancestors, huh?
Yeah,
That's interesting.
yeah.
Well, probably a lot of people do. I mean,
A lot of people do, and you can find it out with DNA analysis.
yeah.
You know?
It's not likely that I do have them because my ancestors all came from Ireland.
Well, my father told me that we had an ancestor who was American Indian, and it may be that what he was saying was true because there's American Indian ancestry as well. But he had, I think it was his grandmother, was visibly a little bit darker than the people around her.
Interesting.
And the story that he said was that she was called American Indian, but he thought she might have been Jewish. And they said American Indian because that was more acceptable than Jewish. And the more recent DNA analysis indicates maybe she was black.
Uh-huh, interesting.
But there was definitely black in my background.
Well, the article says 5 key reasons to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline.
Yep. It's time to stop the Mountain Valley Pipeline and its dangerous attempts to transport dirty, fracked gas across Appalachia. This massive dirty energy project would jeopardize sensitive rivers, streams, drinking water sources, the climate, and the people in the local communities.
Well, this particular pipeline, the Mountain Valley Pipeline, is almost 400 miles.
Yep.
It's starting in northern West Virginia. It goes right through these Blue Ridge Mountains that we're looking at there in the background there, and crosses Virginia before reaching its end in North Carolina. Now, this interesting thing about it is, before they finish paying for it, it's going to be obsolete.
Yeah.
They're not going to need the gas that this pipeline is bringing.
Yes.
Because renewables are going to get so cheap. They are almost now in places in the United States where it'd be cheaper to use renewables, even if you got the gas for free.
Yes.
So they're building a pipeline. It's not going to last for 20 years.
Exactly. And the only thing that it's going to do is make a mess. So we have to keep going. Our next item
it's a relic of a dirty energy past. It's over budget, over schedule, terrible for the climate and clean water, and can't get the needed permits.
Yeah.
There's no documented need. It's time to move on to a clean energy future, which will be happening for only one reason: economy.
Well, actually, I think
Costs.
there's more reason to do it than that.
That's enough.
This next article that we've got is also from Clean Technica, and I found it fascinating.
Elon Musk explains why Tesla solar power is so cheap. Interesting article.
Very interesting. While researching the falling cost of solar power, I was struck to see, and the I here is the author, who I think was Zach Shahan. I was struck to see that the average cost of rooftop solar power system in the United States is $2.19 per watt, but Tesla is now offering rooftop solar power for $1.49 a watt across the country. So I asked Tesla CEO Elon Musk about it, and he explained it.
Well, quick answer, and this is Elon Musk, this is a quotation.
Yeah.
The other solar companies spend heavily on salespeople,
Yep.
advertising, and complex financing instruments. We do not.
Yep.
So that's that.
Yep, we've got to move quickly if we're going to finish this up.
We got a few more than usual this month.
It was actually the same number. It was
I
21.
counted 2 more.
Did you?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe I'm not counting right. Okay.
Maybe I didn't count them right.
This next article is from CNN. It has a very beautiful but somewhat scary picture
Well, let's get the
of
picture up there first.
fighting
so we can look at it.
wildfires.
There's the picture. It's pretty, but it's scary.
Yeah.
And it says 28 people have been killed. Dozens more are missing as fires ravage the West Coast.
Deadly-
Those numbers have gone up.
Yeah, they have. Deadly wildfires have blanketed swaths of states of the West Coast with unhealthy smoke. That has not abated. People are getting very tired of that smoke, complicating the efforts to fight blazes and find dozens of missing people, compounding the misery of thousands who have been displaced. This is just more of the same thing. This is what's going on.
Well, it's an interesting article. There's 80 photos involved. There's just a whole bunch of pictures.
No wonder.
There. And it says across the West, 97 large fires were burning on Saturday.
Yeah.
Thousands have fled their homes.
Okay, we're up to Monday, September 14th, and we have an article here from Clean Technica, and a picture of the port of Barcelona, which looks like it might have been taken on a busy day. What do you
Let's
think?
get that picture up there.
Yeah,
And there it is.
there it is.
And what you're looking at, well, this picture is better than the one I have, but you can see it's on both sides of the river. That is an awful large port.
Yep. Okay, what do you have for title for the article?
The Pareto Principle, conversion of commercial transportation to reduce the effects of climate change.
With a commitment to just 20% of a set of clean practices, it is possible to reduce the carbon footprint by 80%.
2080. That's
Yeah.
the Pareto Principle.
That's right. That's what's known as the Pareto Principle. If we apply that to commercial transportation, it could make a huge difference. Now, this is basically, this principle is just a matter of identifying and gathering the low-hanging fruit. And
That's the way of looking at
you
it,
know,
sure.
that's what it is. Do you have any comments on that, Tom?
Well, the clean practices they're talking about here are what they call the 3 R's. Reduce, reuse, and recycle.
Right.
And the 3 C's, choosing clean energy, carpooling, and conserving water and electricity.
Right.
So we could do it.
We can do that. Okay,
Let's
our
move
next
on
item
here.
is from from Energy Voice, and we're getting back to BP here.
BP, again, says oil demand may have peaked already.
See, this is BP. You
This
know,
is interesting.
they're looking at this and saying, "Well, man, we got to get out of this business." BP PLC said the relentless growth of oil demand is over, and this makes the first supermajor to end an era many thought would last for another decade or more. And when I read that, I think Danish Oil and Natural Gas has done it already. It's mapped the whole route. It's actually out of the oil and gas business 100%. But
They know what's going on.
they know what's going on.
Everybody
but it means
knows what's
BP
going
is
on,
not
as far as I'm
really the
concerned.
first, unless you're going to say that Danish Oil and Natural Gas was not a major.
Well, the industry has been insisting that oil consumption will see decades of growth.
Yeah,
BP's most bullish scenario sees demand no better than broadly flat for the next 2 decades.
right. And
I
I
think
that
they're on the money there.
they're on the money there. Okay, we have an item here which is basically a
Got picture,
cartoon.
too. Yep.
And it's about the hurricane that hit Hurricane Laura that hit Louisiana.
The mosquito apocalypse and the aftermath of Hurricane Laura.
This is from Clean Technica. The aftermath of the Hurricane Laura continues for many in Louisiana. Now they are dealing with the mosquito apocalypse, while Louisiana has been all but forgotten by the national media.
Well,
Walt-
Lake Charles is not a lake. I mean, it is, but it's a small lake. It's really
Yeah.
a town. It's really a region. It's part of southwestern Louisiana.
Right.
And
And
we've talked about southwestern Louisiana.
We have indeed. And you know, there's a town that we've talked about, which is Cameron.
Cameron.
And
It's almost gone.
I haven't seen anything about Cameron. I mean, I've looked for Cameron and I found a photograph that could have been any place, and basically no information. I've got no idea what happened to the people in that town.
Well, we did talk a couple of times about some guys have moved 3 times because of the encroachment of the ocean.
Right.
Well, Lake Charles is a city in southwestern Louisiana hit hard by Hurricane Laura.
Yep.
Not just Lake Charles, but all of southwestern Louisiana needs help.
Okay, we're up to Tuesday, September 15th, and we have a picture of messy weather. And
that is
boy, does that look messy. I looked for quite a while to find a good picture of what was going on in the Atlantic, and I came across this and I said, this is the best. What's there is a map out of where the hurricanes and cyclonic storms and so forth were going to go. So they all look a lot bigger than they actually are. But, the thing that happened here is that there were 5 different hurricanes and
all at once.
All at the
That's
same
never
time.
happened before.
Well, it happened once.
Did it?
Yeah, I think it was 1979. But nevertheless, this is from WLTX.
And it says Atlantic remains busy as Sally gets stronger. Well, Sally's over now, but
Sally has moved inland.
300 inches of rain in Pensacola. No, I'm sorry, 3 feet.
3 feet of rain, which is
3 feet of
36
rain.
inches.
It's less than 300 inches.
Yeah, I guess it is. There were 5 named storms in the Atlantic on Monday before Renee dissipated. Renee, as you can see in that picture, is right in the middle. You want to put that back up?
Yeah.
Renee is right in the middle. And that little L with the thing going around it says that it's a low.
That's what's left.
This is only the second time on record this has happened. Hurricane Sally, and if you look at the picture all the way to the left, kind of hanging in the picture
That's Sally.
over Georgia, that's Sally. I don't think Sally has got quite as far as it's shown in this as being the ultimate goal, but that is Sally, and Sally has made a complete 36 inches of rain. Just imagine 36 inches of rain falling in Brattleboro.
Mm-hmm. Brattleboro would be washed down the Connecticut River. You'd find your house in Hartford.
Well,
the studio would be gone.
Yeah.
Well, Sally made landfall.
Yeah.
At 5 p.m. Central Daylight Time yesterday.
Yes.
Okay. Near Gulf Shores, Alabama, which is about 30 miles west of Pensacola. So it dropped a lot of rain.
And west is worse. If the storm is west of you, that you're on the bad side.
You get more rain.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that was difficult. Okay, we have a picture here
up here. We'll get this one
of the imbalance of the Earth's energy. And
what? Where does the heat go?
This is from Clean Technica. Reporting in the journal Earth System Science Data, the group of over 300 researchers from the World Scientific Institutions tracked and quantified global heat storage, and they're talking about natural heat storing systems from 1960 to 2018 to answer the question, where does the heat go? The new study represents the most accurate state-of-the-art heat inventory study to date. And I have to tell you, this article also I found very worrying.
You found it very what?
Worrying.
Yes, absolutely.
The heat is there. And it's almost like we've got a bunch of big buckets and we can put heat into them. And the buckets are getting filled. And now where does it go?
Well, that's a different wording for what the article says. They're talking about the Earth energy imbalance.
And it's unable to...
It's the difference between the amount of energy coming in from the sun and the amount of energy leaving the Earth. And it's doubling.
Yeah.
Okay, the Earth energy imbalance has doubled in the past decade.
This is very worth reading.
It's very worrying.
It's very worrying, and the following article tells us something that makes it even more worrying.
Well, this is true. We talked about it before the show started. Climate change denier hired for a top position at NOAA. And my comment on that is, isn't that just ducky?
This is from Yahoo News, and the top position here does not mean that he's hired to the top position at NOAA. Just a top position. David Legates, or Legates, or however that's pronounced, a University of Delaware professor of climatology, who has rejected the scientific consensus that human activity is causing climate change, confirmed to NPR this weekend that he had been hired as NOAA's Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce for observation and prediction.
Well, I asked you before the show started, how did that happen with all the evidence that's out there? And your answer didn't surprise me at all. They pay him.
Yeah.
He's just getting paid off.
He was given a position by the state of Delaware, and they fired him because his material was so obviously wrong.
Well, he's affiliated with the Heartland Institute think tank.
The
And that's a
Heartland
very
Institute.
strong right-wing.
The Heartland Institute is one of these
That's
things.
the Koch brothers.
Yeah, it's Koch brothers. And this is this, the same kind of bailiwick that I've forgotten the fellow's name at Harvard. In about a year before the end of Barack Obama's second term, he said 97% of scientists agree that climate change, human-caused climate change, is happening. And MSNBC and two other organizations, I don't remember what they were, all went out to find the answer to a question that really nobody had asked before, and that is, what are these other 3% saying?
Yeah.
So they looked, and MSNBC's results and the other two results were almost identical, except that MSNBC's data set was about twice as big as the other two put together. And what they did was they looked at the writings of nearly 70,000 scientists, and they were able to find four who refused to believe that, who said that they refused to believe that human-caused climate change was happening. My take on this, and I've said this before, my take on this is I would expect to find more than four people who came up with a positive answer if, instead of going to climatologists and saying, do you believe that climate change is not happening, we went to physicists and said, do you believe you are the reincarnation of Isaac Newton? I would expect more than four of them to say yes. What we've got here is basically a few people who are wackadoodle. Once in a while you find people
getting paid.
Once in a while you find people who are wackadoodle, and it turns out they're right.
Yeah.
But in this case, you look at the data, you look at the graphs, you look at the statistics, you look at whatever it is you want to look at. You look at the science, the business of what happens when you store heat. It's all there. It's obvious. It's right in front of you. And for a man like this to say it isn't happening, I'm sorry. That disqualifies him as far as I'm concerned.
Well, like I said, I think they're getting paid. Matter of fact, we know some of these guys have come out on other issues. I'm trying to think of an issue that they did, because we got the same scientists in both cases, and they're both contrarians. And
yeah. Tom, we've got about 4.5 minutes, and we've got 4 items to cover.
We got 4? Wednesday, there's only 3. Isn't it?
Well, we still have, I'm sorry, you're right. It's just 3. Okay.
Well, let's hit them real quick. We got a picture coming up here.
Okay. We're up to
Where's that
Wednesday,
picture?
September 16th. We have a picture
There we
of
go.
Duke University. My brother went to Duke.
Oh, yeah?
Didn't stay there very
Why
long.
is it that all these colleges look the same?
Well, they're all using architecture that is kind
Same
of...
architect.
Well, no, at the time they were built, the business of neo-Gothic architecture was popular and they, just go to an architect and say, we want neo-Gothic, and that's what they get. So
Well, from the article, it says Duke University buys 101 megawatts of solar from Duke Energy.
Yep.
Huh? Duke? I can explain that when you get to it.
Okay, PV Magazine USA gave us this one. Under the terms of a deal with Duke Energy, Duke University will purchase roughly 101 megawatts of solar capacity from 3 solar facilities in North Carolina. That power, combined with other efforts, is projected to result in a 69% reduction in the university's carbon emissions by 2022.
Well, what's the matter here? Come on, you. There we go. What's happening here is it's 2 different entities.
Mm-hmm.
2 Dukes. both named after the same guy,
Yeah.
okay, who happens to be a robber baron.
Yeah.
Okay, he's known as James Buchanan Duke. And when I was a kid, there was a woman who was in the news all the time, sort of like the Kardashians today, was named Doris Duke.
Yeah.
And she was always marrying somebody or something like
Something.
that.
Yeah.
She was always in the news. And her only fame was because she had fame.
Yeah. There you go.
Well, the university's goal is reducing campus emissions by 84% by 2024. And it looks like they're on the way.
Yep.
And by the way, Duke is the American Tobacco Company. That's where the Duke money came from cigarettes. For what it's worth.
For what it's worth.
Well, they were the first company to make cigarettes.
Okay.
Before that, you could roll your own cigarettes, but you couldn't buy pre-made cigarettes. And they came up with a machine that'll make them.
Yeah.
And they got very wealthy doing it.
Yes. Okay, we have an item here from Clean Technica.
And we got a picture.
And we have a weird picture, which
Oh,
really
that's the
doesn't
secret
have
sauce.
as much to do with the article as it might seem.
Well, it does and it doesn't.
Yeah.
What's the secret sauce behind new forever solar panels?
Violet Power, a startup based in Oregon, looks to build the first modern integrated PV factory in the United States. That's an interesting thing. This trade war with China happened because of PVs, and we didn't have an integrated PV factory in the United States. Producing both solar components and the finished panels instead of relying on imported components. The company said it will back its PVs with a 50-year warranty.
That's
That is
interesting.
50 years.
Well, a standard industry warranty is 25 years, so they're double.
Which is fairly long.
Oh, yeah.
But-
well, there's nothing much happens to solar panels. They deteriorate a little bit, but small.
We have to distinguish between silicon, polycrystalline and monocrystalline panels on the one side, and the flexible panels.
They're not talking about the flexible.
Yeah, we're not talking about those flexible panels. Thin film, they're called.
This is a kind of a confusing article.
It is a little bit confusing, but it's the reason why I chose this was because it does kind of show there are new things coming.
Well, there's a whole bunch of articles and a whole bunch of reasons why Violet Power is going to get into business, but I'm not going to mention them. But the author is very skeptical of their plans.
Well, she is. This is Tina Casey. And Tina Casey is a really interesting article and author. And the picture that we had there was a picture. Thinks this, and what they're talking about in this picture, and she thinks this may be what Violet Power is doing. He's looking at the substrate of a solar panel that is built on aluminum foil
rather than copper.
rather than having copper wires.
Well, this is a big price differential.
Yeah.
Tremendous price differential. So that could be almost all of it.
Yeah, it could be. Okay,
Well, as I said after I read the article, this might work, but there's about 10 steps that all have to work together smoothly.
Yeah.
And the author is very skeptical that's going to happen.
Okay, we're up to our last article. This is from CNN. The picture's already up.
Picture up there already.
The picture is of a woman being evacuated by a guy who's pulling her along in a canoe. She looks very uncomfortable.
The climate crisis could be making Hurricane Sally worse.
Here's how. Scientists believe global warming is influencing hurricanes and making their impacts worse, and Hurricane Sally looks to be checking all the boxes. Hurricanes are intensifying faster because they're over warmer water. They're moving more slowly, so they dump their rain in one place. And they're producing more rain than they had produced before.
There's a 4-minute video in here that's worth looking at.
Yep.
And the takeaway, it says, with Sally, 3 or 4 months worth of rain could fall before the storm will.
It's worth of rain in 4 hours.
Yeah.
Okay, and now we're up to our last little bit, which says, have a swimmingly copacetic week.
I think it does.
And so we will say goodbye.
Well, I'll put us up here and we can say goodbye.
Come back next time. Bye-bye.